What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be going over yet another deck that got new support in Photon Hypernova, which really changes the outlook of how you can play this deck. But before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also mean a lot as they help notify you when I upload on the channel. So for this first combo here, and this is something that you could actually already do, but because I'm going over the entire deck, I want to show it anyways. And we sent our Herald of the Arclight in order to search our White Knight of Dogmatika, which is the first of two ritual monsters that will play out of this archetype, and it reads you can ritual summon this card with Dogmatika Calamity, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. If your opponent activates a card or effect except during the damage step, you can send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, look at your opponent's extra deck and send one monster from it to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to half of the combined attack of those monsters sent to the graveyard until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of White Knight once per turn, and a true White Knight for the archetype, as sending Herald of the Arclight is now an option, and this immediately is able to get you into your ritual spell Dogmatika Calamity, and this card can be used to ritual summon any Dogmatika ritual monster. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal exactly that of the ritual monster you ritual summon, or send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard whose levels equal the level of the ritual monster you ritual summon. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. So you'll see that they continue the theme of the extra deck stuff, and these aren't the new cards that we'll be getting in Photon Hypernova. I'm just reading through these so you can get a glimpse of what the archetype does, as they do continue the theme of sending stuff from the extra deck to the graveyard, along with locking you out of the extra deck. So from here we're going to use the Dogmatika Calamity in order to send a Titaniclad to the graveyard, and this will allow us to get two interruptions via the Titaniclad, which will special summon out an Ecclesia in our end phase, and then that can get us a Fleur, which will give us one hand trap. But the other cool thing here is that on your opponent's turn, whenever they activate anything, as you see, the Yami there is just a random card. Anything they do, you can respond to it with White Knight in order to send an Entis along with a monster from your opponent's extra deck, and then the Entis will get a pop. So it's nice to get knowledge along with the ability to get removal off of just one card, as well as effect negation. Now in this second replay, I'll actually be featuring the new Dogmatika cards, and the first one we have here is Dogmatika Tricks, and it reads, when this card is activated, you can add one Dogmatika ritual monster or one Dogmatika ritual spell from your deck to your hand. Then if your opponent controls a monster, you can add one Dogmatika card from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, if you control the Dogmatika ritual monster, you can look at either player's extra deck and send one monster from it to the graveyard. You can only activate one Dogmatika Tricks per turn. So yet another theme that we've seen from Photon Hypernova, which is continuous spells with secondary effects, like the Photon or Galaxy one, Galaxy 100, and this combo just shows that it can either be the ritual spell or ritual monster that you search with Dogmatika Tricks, along with it being the other search target for the Ecclesia, but having the Ecclesia here just means that you'll be able to normal summon it to get your search. And I'll point out how it changes this combo if you happen to just open these two instead with no Dogmatika Tricks or Ecclesia. But basically, as you see from here, we'll be able to send a monster from the extra deck, in which we send the Titaniclad in order to bring out the White Knight. And what this means here is that had we not had our searchers and we just summoned it with these two cards being the only thing in our hands, the Titaniclad would then pop off in the end phase, getting us our Ecclesia, which would then be able to get us our Fleur. But this is a recurring theme of the deck, as the Dogmatika cards do have a lot of searching stuff that they can do, as we're going to use the effect of the Dogmatika Tricks in order to send a card from our extra deck to the graveyard, as we'll send the Garura in order to get us a draw, and we won't set the imperm as it's just any card that we're drawing, but basically you can get yourself your Fleur at the end phase just off having these two cards. Now this time we'll be introducing the Libromancer card into the combos along with the Dogmatika tricks, and this one will be more of a Libromancer combo, but it is here to show the reason why I play these archetypes together. As we have the fire in our hand, we're going to search the second new card that we'll be getting in Photon Hypernova. White Zoa of Dogmatika reads, cannot be ritual summoned except by Dogmatika Calamity or another Dogmatika card effect. Dogmatika monsters you control are unaffected by the activated effects of your opponent's fusion, synchro, exceed, and link monsters. During your main phase, you can make your opponent choose and apply one of these effects. You and these effects means that your opponent. For every 2 cards in your extra deck, send 1 monster from your hand or extra deck to the graveyard. The second one is return all fusion, synchro, exceed, and link monsters you control to the extra deck. You can only use this effect of Zoa once per turn. So great artwork and an absolutely insane effect, as it also being easy to summon with the Dogmatika ritual spells that you have, though you do have to be able to get into them. But having the Dogmatika tricks is going to let us get into our Libromancer engine, which will allow us to get the Geek off the fire. We can then special summon the Geek, and if you've played Libromancer, you know where this is going. As we add ourselves the field spell, we'll then be able to get ourselves the Libromancer ritual, as we'll then be able to use the field spell in order to ritual summon it, and then we'll be able to use its effect to get us the trap from our deck to give us a disruption on our opponent's turn. So I know that it's not much work with the Dogmatika cards here, but before I get on to the next combos, I just wanted to show how Libromancers synergize with a ritual deck. Now these next few combos, I'll be featuring Nadir's Servant, as it is the biggest power card this deck has, and we're going to start this one by activating the Dogmatika tricks. Getting ourselves the last ritual spell, we play the Dogmatika Macabre, and it reads that this card can be used to ritual summon any Dogmatika ritual monster from your hand or graveyard. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field, and or banish fusion or synchro monsters from your graveyard whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster you ritual summon. Then, if both White Knight of Dogmatika and White Relic of Dogmatika are on the field, you can look at either your extra deck or your opponent's extra deck and send 1 monster from it to the graveyard. You can only activate 1 Dogmatika Macabre per turn. So the second effect won't really be relevant to this. Being able to bring back a ritual from the graveyard and even having the ability to banish stuff in the graveyard for it really does help with the capabilities of this deck past turn 1. As we're now going to activate the Nadir Servant, send a Herald, searching ourselves the White Knight. The Herald will then allow us to search ourselves the Dogmatika Calamity, and then from here we can activate the Calamity, send the Titaniclad in order to bring out the White Knight, and then we'll use the effect of the Dogmatika tricks in order to send the Herald to our graveyard to get its effect. As we're going to search the Zoa now, and this time we're actually going to get the Zoa off, as we're going to use the Dogmatika Cabre, and keep in mind that this isn't necessarily an optimal play. It may not be something that you want to do, but I do show it in order to get the effect off, and we're going to be able to send multiple cards from our opponent's extra deck and or hand, whichever they choose. Just another combo I wanted to also add because of the ability to get both rituals on board. But you do miss out on the end phase Titaniclad effect. Now this next combo will be Ecclesia Nadir Servant, and we'll start this one by activating the Ecclesia's effect upon its normal summon, and then we'll get ourselves the Branded and Central Dogmatika. And this card reads, if you special summon 1 ritual monster and no other cards, a spell card or effect except during the damage step, you can look at either player's extra deck, send 1 monster from it to the graveyard. If you special summon 1 fusion monster and no other cards, a spell card or effect except during the damage step, you can target that monster. For the rest of this turn, it gains attack equal to its original attack. Also, it can only attack position monsters your opponent controls. You can only use each effect of Central once per turn. So I would like to point out that this is actually relevant if you play Super Poly. Outside of that, you won't really be using the second effect, as we're now going to activate the Central here, and we didn't get the Dogmatika tricks because if you saw in the first combo, the Nadir Servant is basically just 1 card ritual summon, as we're able to get ourselves the addition of the White Knight, use the Herald that we send off the Nadir in order to get us the Calamity, and now we can activate that Calamity, getting us into our White Knight with the Titaniclad in graveyard, and then we'll be able to trigger off the Central in order to send a card from our extra deck to the graveyard, which at this point we're going to send Herald, but you could also send something like Garura if you want to draw a card instead. But from here we'll move on to the end phase, activate the effect of the Titaniclad. This will get us the Fleur in hand, wrapping up this combo. Now we'll get onto one of the stronger 2-card combos, and this will have your Libromancer access along with the Nadir Servant. This wouldn't work with the field spell, but as long as you have Geek Boy or Fire, you're fine, as we're going to use the Nadir Servant for the same purpose as usual. Send our Herald, and then be able to add our White Knight, as we're going to use the Herald to get ourselves the Calamity. From here we can activate the Fire, revealing the White Knight, then use its effect. We special summon it, which will net us a search for the Geek. We'll then be able to special summon the Geek by activating its effect in hand. We'll then use its effect upon special summon to get us into the field spell. The field spell will then get us into the Libromancer Ritual, as from here we're going to activate the field spell in order to ritual summon the Libromancer Ritual, as we're going to use its effect to get us the Libromancer Trap, and then from here we're going to activate the Calamity, as we're going to send the Titaniclad for the White Knight, and finally we can go to our end phase, special summon out the Ecclesia from our deck off Titaniclad. Ecclesia will get us a search for the Fleur, giving us 3 interruptions via the White Knight, the Fleur, and the Libromancer Trap. Next one is a 3-card combo. We'll move on to these now, as we've basically shown the main 2-card combos you want to know. And the first one here will start by activating the Dogmatika tricks, as we'll get ourselves the White Knight. We'll then be able to activate the Geek Boy, since we have a ritual monster in hand to reveal off it now. And this will be able to get us into our field spell, as we'll be able to activate the field spell, get ourselves the Fire, and then activate its effect, which will allow us to special summon it. We'll then be able to use its effect to get us the search. Will get us our Libromancer Ritual, as we're going to activate the field spell to ritual summon it. And then from here we can use its effect to set ourselves the trap, as we're going to now normal summon the Ecclesia. This will be able to search our Dogmatika Calamity. And then from here, we'll activate the Calamity, sending our Titaniclad to graveyard, as we'll special summon out the Knight. And then from here, we can activate the Dogmatika tricks, as we'll be able to send the Garura to the graveyard for a draw here. If you're going second, you can do something like Entis, Aggregator, the one that negates stuff, or whatever you want to, but get ourselves a random draw here, as we're going to activate the Titaniclad in the end phase, getting us our Fleur, wrap up this combo. So this time around, we'll be using Nadir's Servant, Dogmatika Tricks, and Libromancer Fire, and this is definitely one of the stronger 3-card combos, in my opinion, as we'll be able to activate the Dogmatika Tricks. This will get us the Zoa, and then from here we can go off with our Libromancer engine, and just being able to play around hand traps like this, as you have your Libro engine stuff before you activate the Nadir Servant, is definitely nice, but we'll be able to get into the field spell here off of Geek, activate the field spell, go into Libromancer Ritual Monster after adding it to hand via the field spell, and then from here we'll be able to use the field spell to ritual summon it, as we'll then get ourselves the set of the Libro Trap, and then we'll activate the Nadir Servant here, getting us the White Knight along with the Herald in graveyard. The Herald will then be able to get us Dogmatika Calamity, as we'll then activate it, be able to send Titaniclad in order to special summon out or ritual summon the White Knight, and we'll use the Dogmatika tricks in order to send ourselves either Garura, or in this case we're just going to do Herald to go do everything we can, as we're going to get ourselves the Cabre, and then from here go to the end phase, special summon out the Ecclesia, as this will get us the search for the Fleur, and then from here we'll have more follow-up with the Zoa. You'll be freely able to banish your Titaniclad and Herald in the graveyard. And for the final 3-card combo, before I get into the test hands, really the broken hands, the way I drew, but we're going to start this one with the Central, the Dogmatika tricks, and the Libro field spell, so it's definitely kind of a weirder opening, but you'll see that it's still going to be just fine, as we're going to activate the field spell for it to get the Fire, and then from here we're going to activate the Fire, special summon it out, then activate its search effect, which will get us into the Libromancer Ritual Monster. Then from here we're going to activate the Central. We'll then use the Libro Ritual spell in order to ritual summon out the Dogmatika Libromancer Ritual, as we're going to be able to trigger off the Central that way in order to send ourselves the Herald, and then this will allow us to get into our Cabre, and from here we can activate the effect of the Ritual to allow us to set the Libro Trap, and then activate the Cabre, as this will be able to banish the Herald and send the Fire in order to bring back out the White Knight from our graveyard. graveyard, as we'll then be able to use our Dogmatika Tricks effect, and this will send our Titaniclad in order to get us into our Ecclesia and Fleur, give us the extra disruption, and still end on a good enough board off those 3 cards. Now for this first hand, and you've seen a lot of these cards before, the Fenrir, this basically just gives you an extra search for a level 7 that you can use as tribute fodder while also giving you an extra disruption to pair with your Dogmatika stuff. So that's why I think playing Fenrir is strong. But we're going to start here by activating the Geek Boy, then getting the field spell. The field spell will then get us into the fire. The fire can then activate, get itself on board by revealing the White Knight, and use the fire to get ourselves the search for the Libro Ritual Monster. And from here we'll activate the field spell in order to ritual summon the Libro Ritual Monster, use its effect to search us the trap, and then from here we're going to normal summon the Ecclesia. We'll then be able to use its effect to get us the Dogmatika Tricks, and then from here we'll use its effect to search us the Dogmatika Calamity. Then we'll activate the Dogmatika Calamity, send away the Titaniclad from our extra deck as we're going to out the White Knight, and then we can use the Dogmatika Tricks in order to send a monster our extra deck to the graveyard. This can be Garura. Just to go out for the video, I'm going to send the Herald, and then we're going to get ourselves the White Zoa, as we're going to activate the Cabre because we can tribute off the Ecclesia along with the Herald, the Fenrir that we searched off of the other Fenrir in order to bring out the Zoa. What's nice about this is that these are still Dogmatika cards. When you get your Fleur in the end phase, it'll still be a negation. You also have the protection given off of the White Zoa, as we're going to use its effect here, which will just basically rip what your opponent chooses, their hand or extra deck. Now the final replay here, and this will be the one with Nadir's Servant, a lot of the same cards as the previous hand. There's one thing about playing Dogmatika Libromancer is that a lot of this stuff searches everything out. Basically just playing a bunch of searchers, so it really isn't going to be too much different what you can do each hand. It'll just be about how you do it and what cards get you there. We're going to start here by the Fenrir off the special summon Fenrir, activating the Dogmatika Tricks, which will get us into the Zoa. We can then use the fire with the Zoa in hand, use the fire's effect in order to get a search here as we get the Geek. The Geek can then reveal the Zoa, special summon itself out, which will get us into the field spell, and then from here we'll activate the field spell, getting us the search for the Libro Ritual Monster, and then we'll use the Libro field spell to ritual summon the Libro Ritual Monster, and then from here we'll use its effect to get us the trap. From here we'll normal summon the Ecclesia, much like the last hand, get ourselves the search for the Cabre, as we're going to activate the Nadir's Servant now, get ourselves the Herald into the graveyard along with the White Knight on our hand, and then from here we can activate the Herald to get us the Dogmatika Calamity, giving us access to both our ritual monsters here, as we're going to activate the Dogmatika Calamity, sending the Titaniclad to the graveyard, then use the Cabre in order to bring out the Zoa for the video, as we're going to use its effect in order to rip any card that you can out of your opponent's extra deck, and whichever they choose. And then we'll use the Dogmatika Tricks to send the Garura to the graveyard in order to get us an extra draw, as we get an Imperm. And we're going to pass on to the end phase, as we'll be able to use the Titaniclad for the Fleur in order to give us an extra disruption, putting us on a really sizable board. Hey everyone, before I get onto the deck profile, I wanted to make a quick edit because I left some things out that I forgot that are definitely worth the mention. The first one here being Ibli, and how Ibli is potentially a great side deck option for your Fenrir for when you're going first, as you can normal summon it, go into your Almirage or Langaribo, give your opponent the Ibli, and then you can special summon your Ecclesia because you'll have an extra deck monster on board, and then make your plays from there. And the other thing is Farajit, and how you can potentially do something like one Garura and one Farajit if you want to draw twice. And then finally, the last thing I really want to talk about is Thrust and its ability to search Nadir's Servant. I do mention this briefly later in the video, but I want to say that I am considering changing the hand traps for the Thrust version, as it does help you with the hands where you may clog on just one engine, or just your going second cards. But anyways, I'll get back to the deck profile. With all the combos out of the way, we can finally get to the deck list. The first thing to notice is that you'll see that I'm not running pre-prep or anything like that. I'm not running the Maximus either. And to explain those off the bat, I feel if you play pre-prep, you're committing too much space to the ritual stuff, and you won't have space for going second cards. Also explain the choices here momentarily, but Maximus I didn't want to play either because we're in a format with Despia where you don't want to trigger their extra deck effects too. It just feels like a greedy play in general overall. In terms of maintaining the consistency of this deck, as I feel it is one of the strong points the deck has with the Dogmatika tricks, the 3 Nadir Servant, the Libro Engine, the 3 Ecclesia, with the Terraforming just being a ton of consistency pieces. Also see that we don't play the white, and again, I just didn't want to fill this deck with ritual stuff. You don't need to. I think if there's one formula that we should follow is we've seen in more recent ritual decks is the low count of ritual monsters. Just because the Cabre has the secondary effect to control a white knight and a white relic, I still don't think that's worth playing because it just feels greedy. I also wanted to go over the hand traps. And the reason that I have hand traps over the board breakers here is because of Garura being able to draw into them and then pair them with your Fleur felt powerful in my opinion. You can also play impact hand traps like Nibiru if you want to, but there's always the option for board breakers if you prefer that, because tasking is just another way to get into your Nadir Servant if it comes down to it. It can also get you into your Terraforming. Lastly, I would like to talk about Dogmatika Nation and the Dogmatika Calamity. I feel like there is a world where in some random formats you could play the Nation over the Central, as the Central is just an extender overall. Requires you to ritual summon a monster in order to get your send off, and there are a lot of cases where it can be dead just like the field spell, but the field spell is also searchable by terraforming, which is something to consider. And you'll see that you can also play a second copy of Dogmatika Calamity instead of the Cabre. I just like the ability to ritual summon from the graveyard in order to keep our ritual count low. The last thing I want to talk about here is Omega, and I think it's really important as you can send it to the extra deck and then be able to recur your ritual spells or your ritual monsters if you need to. That's the reason for the Omega. You can see here the Magician of Black Chaos Max along with the Chaos form. If you want to go with a heavier ritual type build, then why not? But I feel like looking at modern deck building, in my mind this just felt more correct. To keep as much going second card space as possible. And lastly, not too much to say about this. Underworld Goddess is just a second option for Masquerena that you can play. Really not going to link away or exceed much in this deck. You have them because you have the ability to. Guska is just especially helpful when you have the Fire and the Ecclesia on board and something gets hand trapped or stopped where basically left to do nothing but rank 4, your Baguska can just buy you a couple of turns. Now with all of that out of the way, I can get to the card by card. I have the 1 Fleur, the 3 Ecclesia, the 3 Field Spells, the 3 Fenrirs, the 3 Ash, the 1 Zoa, the 1 White Knight, 1 Doombroker, the 3 Fire, the 1 Intervention, the Punishment, the 3 Geek Boy, the 1 Central, the Dogmatika Calamity, the Cabre, the 3 Effect Veilers, the 3 Imperms, the 3 Dogmatika Tricks, the 3 Nadir Servant, and the 1 Terraforming to round out the main deck. Onto the extra deck, we have the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity, which can be any level 12 fusion or synchro. You're playing it just for the ritual spell. Basically lets you kaleidoscope it to the graveyard. We have the Omega, the Heralds, the 2 Entis, the 2 Garuras, the 2 Titaniclads, the 2 Aggregators, the Baguska, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Masquerena to round out the deck profile. But anyways, if you made it this far into the video, I thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.